Good evening, I'm John Yang. Judy Woodruff is away. On the NewsHour tonight, the North Korea threat. After the North's most powerful nuclear test yet, the United States and the world struggles with how to deal with Kim Jong-un. Also ahead, as the damage from Harvey becomes more evident, and with cleanup efforts in the early stages, a look at how those still stuck in shelters are coping. Then it's Politics Monday. As Congress returns, we discuss President Trump's reported decision to end DACA and Congress's first step to fund rebuilding after Harvey. Plus, in remembrance, we look back at American poet John Ashbery, his influential work, and what made the prolific writer unique.
Poetry comes to me out of thin air or out of my unconscious mind. It's sort of the way dreams come to us.
All that and more on tonight's PBS NewsHour. North Korea has again seized the world's attention with a new nuclear blast. The weekend test may move Pyongyang a quantum leap forward in its bid to become a nuclear power, capable of threatening the U.S. mainland. That, in turn, has set off a new diplomatic flurry. Special correspondent Nick Schifrin reports.
Enough is enough.
For the second time in a week, the Security Council today held an emergency session on North Korea, and U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, said North Korean leader Kim Jong-un had slapped the international community in the face.
His abusive use of missiles and his nuclear threats show that he is begging for war. War is never something the United States wants. We don't want it now. But our country's patience is not unlimited.
And for the second time in a week, South Korea today practiced an attack on North Korea. The South Korean military fired missiles it said could target North Korea's nuclear test sites. Today, President Trump agreed to help South Korea increase the size of those missiles, sell South Korea more weapons, and South Korea said the U.S. would soon deploy a carrier strike group and long-range bombers. Those military moves provide the U.S. with options that Secretary of Defense James Mattis mentioned yesterday.
Any threat to the United States or its territories, including Guam, or our allies, will be met with a massive military response. We are not looking to the total annihilation of a country, namely North Korea. But as I said, we have many options to do so.
But Chinese ambassador to the UN, Leo Chi-yi, said today pressure won't produce peace.
The parties concerned must strengthen their sense of urgency, make joint efforts together to ease the situation and restart the dialogue and talks and prevent further deterioration.
In the last few years, North Korea's missile and nuclear programs have slowly evolved. But this weekend's test is more than just another step.
I think this is definitely a significant leap in technology. A thermonuclear weapon is not just an evolutionary change.
James Acton is a physicist and co-director of Carnegie's nuclear policy program. He says there's no verification yet of North Korea's claim it exploded a hydrogen or thermonuclear bomb, but it seems that way.
It was a very large explosion, about 100 kilotons, so that is certainly consistent with a hydrogen bomb. The day before the test, they released photos of Kim Jong-un standing next to a device that looked like a thermonuclear weapon. And we also know they've been trying to develop the materials they would need to build a thermonuclear weapon.
Here's the difference. An atomic bomb splits a uranium or plutonium atom. That's fission. That split creates more splits, and a chain reaction that creates a nuclear blast. That's the starting point for a thermonuclear bomb. The fission explosions create enough energy for hydrogen atoms to fuse together. That's fusion, and it makes a much more powerful bomb.
A thermonuclear weapon can produce yields that are 10, 100, even 1,000 times bigger than a simple atomic weapon.
This was the size of the impact of the U.S. atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. And this would be the size of the impact from this weekend's North Korean bomb.
The Hiroshima test leveled the center of a city. It killed about a couple of 100,000 people. This bomb is 5 times bigger. That kind of gives you some sense of the enormous explosive scale of the weapon that was detonated.
It's not clear if North Korea can miniaturize that kind of bomb so it can be delivered by a ballistic missile, but James Acton says it's only a matter of time.
If this was not a miniaturized thermonuclear weapon, unfortunately I have little doubts that North Korea will be able to miniaturize it, will be able to do so in fairly short order, and then stick it on the nose cone of a ballistic missile.
A U.S. intelligence official told me today it's too early to know exactly what kind of bomb North Korea detonated, but, quote, we're highly confident that this was a test of an advanced nuclear device, and what we've seen so far is not inconsistent with North Korea's claims. So from more on all this, we get two views. Bob Gallucci had an extensive career in nuclear arms control, including as chief U.S. negotiator with North Korea during the Clinton administration. He's a professor at Georgetown University and chair of the U.S. Korea Institute at Johns Hopkins University. And Balbina Huang served in the State Department during the George W. Bush administration. She is now a visiting professor at Georgetown University, and welcome to you both. Thank you very much. Bob, I want to turn to you first. Are we at a point where we only have two options, either going to war or somehow accepting what seems to be an inevitable march toward a North Korea with the ability to put a thermonuclear weapon on an ICBM?
No, we don't have only two options. There is, I think, still a possibility. I think Secretary Mattis said there's always the possibility that negotiations might succeed. We might be able to roll back, even eliminate the North Korean threat. It is possible that we will decide, the United States will decide to live with this, to live with deterrence, as we have with the Soviet Union, then Russia and China. But at this point, there's an awful lot of language being used about how we are not going to tolerate this and not going to put up with it. If one wishes to do something about that capability, certainly there is a military option, and the Secretary's spoken to that. But there's also the possibility of negotiations.
And Albina, do you think that there is the possibility of negotiations? There have been negotiations in the past, and we're at a point where North Korea seems to have at least a very large bomb, if not a thermonuclear weapon.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily mutually exclusive, either one or the other. I think it all depends on what we want to achieve with negotiations. And frankly speaking, while we work on whether negotiations might work or not, to establish our goals, are we trying to completely eliminate all of North Korea's nuclear weapons programs and future ambitions? That's a different story than trying to contain or slow down or even freeze or dismantle its existing programs.
I'll just ask another question to follow up, though. I mean, the U.S. has talked about denuclearizing the peninsula for a long time, and that just doesn't seem like it's going to happen, though, right?
Well, it's certainly very difficult to, because how do you negotiate with a party that, first of all, has refused to negotiate because it won't put the nuclear weapons on the table, and secondly, that seems to be the die-hard ambition of this regime.
Bob, can you negotiate with a regime that has a die-hard ambition?
I recollect doing so. A long time ago in another universe, around 1994, we concluded a deal with North Korea that ended what we knew of as their nuclear weapons program. It was based on plutonium as the fissile material to drive that weapons program, and the facilities that would produce the plutonium and separate it were shut down, closed down, for 8 years while the deal was in place. And that was their nuclear weapons program. Now, they, from our perspective at least, cheated on that deal by having secret arrangements with the Pakistanis to bring them another technology for another type of material. But I would submit to you at this point that the negotiation produced an outcome in which North Korea was without nuclear weapons when they could have been with nuclear weapons. And an estimate from the intelligence community of the early 90s was that the North could enter the 21st century with roughly 100 nuclear weapons if that deal had not been concluded. Okay, it ultimately fell apart. Agreed. The question is now, can you have another deal? Can you have a deal that sticks? Can we get the transparency we need? I actually may disagree with my colleague a bit here about whether it is possible to get a deal that denuclearizes the peninsula. I don't think you can get it in one step. I think you'd have a freeze, you'd have a cap. But I think if we don't have as a declared objective to have a denuclearized Korean peninsula, then we really undercut the status of our ally, South Korea.
Bob, I mean, okay, sorry. Bob,
Yes.
you go.
Well, I completely agree with that, and I do think that we should never take off denuclearization as the goal. We should remember that it's actually the two Koreas in 1991 that signed an agreement that said that they both wanted to denuclearize. So that principle is in place, and that was actually the basis of both what you worked on and then also the six-party talks.
But Bob, very quickly, how can you negotiate today with that same notion of what you brought back in the 90s when North Korea has seemingly a thermonuclear weapon?
This is not beyond the minds of men and women to figure out. If the North will come to the table, if the United States will come to the table without preconditions and begin a discussion, then there are ways to dismantle, take apart nuclear weapons programs. We did that in the case of Iraq some time ago, and we had an inspection system, and we took apart a pretty sophisticated nuclear weapons program. We certainly can do it in the case of North Korea if the North Koreans are persuaded that they can achieve their security objectives without nuclear weapons.
Very quickly, I want to ask a question to Albina about alliances. I want to read a tweet from President Trump. He uses the word appeasement. He wrote, "South Korea is finding, as I have told them, that their talk of appeasement with North Korea will not work. They only understand one thing." Sorry about that. We put the wrong tweet up. There it is. They only understand one thing. Is he alienating U.S. allies, Albina?
Well, what's really fascinating is that there's nothing that focuses the mind of allies more than when threats seem to become imminent. So it's very interesting to watch what South Korea is doing and what President Moon is doing. He's defying expectations, actually. I'm rather surprised by how he's reacting to all of this. And in fact, President Moon is showing that he really wants to strengthen the alliance.
Bob, quickly, is President Trump alienating a U.S. ally?
It's hard to put clearly the amount of this destructive impact character that the president has accomplished with just a simple characterization of negotiations as appeasement. He should want to preserve that option. His Secretary of Defense wants to preserve that option. It may not work. That may not be the solution to this problem, but we don't want to dismiss it, and we don't want to politicize it with a word like appeasement.
Bob Galici, Bobina Huang, thank you very much.
Thank you.
John?
Thanks, Nick. In the day's other news, Texas officials have raised the death toll from Hurricane Harvey to 60 as the recovery moved slowly forward, even as parts of Houston remained underwater. Torrents gushed from a swollen reservoir in a controlled release that forced 4,700 more homes to be evacuated. The top elected official in Harris County, which includes Houston, said the hard work is just beginning.
Storm's been dealt with, but if 2 weeks from now people still have debris and they don't have a sense that it's going to be picked up, if they don't have a sense that they're going to have housing, if they don't have a sense that all levels of government are working together to bring them relief, then all these warm, fuzzy feelings we have today are going to be gone.
Elsewhere, officials lifted an evacuation order around a wrecked chemical plant outside Houston. And leaders in the House and Representatives set a vote for Wednesday on a disaster aid bill totaling $7.9 billion. Meanwhile, Hurricane Irma grew into a dangerous Category 4 storm with sustained winds of 130 miles an hour and still growing. Satellite images today showed the storm's advance. The governors of Florida and Puerto Rico declared emergencies. The storm is expected to pass close to the Leeward Islands tomorrow night before moving toward Puerto Rico and possibly South Florida by the weekend. Rain and cooler temperatures are helping firefighters in Los Angeles battle the largest blaze in city history. The fire has been burning since Friday and has swept through nearly 6,000 acres. But LA's fire chief says damage to homes has been minimal.
Our people are tired. I talked to them at length yesterday and last night. They had a good rest period, a large percentage of them last night. And that's a good sign. As long as the weather continues to cooperate, I am very confident and convinced we'll be fine.
To the north, crews are struggling with fires and high heat. At Yosemite National Park today, high wind pushed a fire into a grove of giant sequoia trees that are 2,700 years old. Officials aren't sure of the extent of the damage. Lawmakers and activists are bracing for President Trump to stop shielding 800,000 young immigrants from deportation. The Obama-era effort covers people who were brought into the United States illegally as children. It's widely reported Mr. Trump will announce tomorrow that he's ending the program in 6 months. That's to give Congress time to address the issue. We'll have more later in our Politics Monday segment. Violence against the Rohingya Muslims of Myanmar grew growing condemnation across the Muslim world today. In Russian Chechnya, tens of thousands of protesters rallied in the capital of Grozny. They demanded an end to the violence. In Jakarta, Indonesia, hundreds of Muslim women protested in front of Myanmar's embassy. The Indonesian president urged Myanmar's leaders to act.
We deplore the violence that occurred in Myanmar. Real action is needed, not just statements and condemnations. The government of Indonesia is committed to continuing to help address the humanitarian crisis in cooperation with civil society in Indonesia and the international community.
Almost 90,000 Rohingya have crossed into Bangladesh in just 10 days, fleeing a military crackdown. The government of the largely Buddhist nation says Rohingya insurgents provoked the trouble. And the Electoral Commission in Kenya has set October 17th to rerun the presidential election. President Uhuru Kenyatta was declared the winner over opposition leader Raila Odinga in the August 8th vote. Last week, the country's Supreme Court nullified the result, citing irregularities. Still to come on the NewsHour, we head to Houston, where the massive cleanup continues in the wake of Hurricane Harvey. Our Politics Monday team digs into President Trump's apparent plans for so-called dreamers and much more. At the height of Harvey's fury in Houston, thousands of people sought refuge in the city's convention center. While the numbers have gone down, for those who are still there, the sense of desperation is still high. Special correspondent Marcia Biggs has our report.
It's been one of the symbols of the Hurricane Harvey disaster, and the George R. Brown Convention Center is still bustling today. At its highest point since Harvey made landfall 10 days ago, the center was catering to 10,000 people. Today, only around 1,400 remain as full residents. But those who remain are seemingly some of the most vulnerable.
I don't have no friends and no family. I mean, and if they do, they flooded out just as well as I am.
Cheryl Conley has been here since last Tuesday. She has congestive heart failure and epilepsy and hasn't been able to reach her landlord, even though she's heard that her apartment is flooded and mold infested.
How desperate are you to get out of here?
On a scale from 1 to a million. I'm trying to see why FEMA keep having my status pending, when I have a letter right here from the doctor saying that I'm critical care, that I have congestive heart failure and seizures, and nobody's doing nothing about it.
For now, she says she has nowhere to go. People like Cheryl are turning to the legion of lawyers set up in the lobby.
Mostly about visas expiring.
Rita Lucido is a private lawyer and activist coordinating the effort. She says the biggest issues today surround filing for benefits and knowing about renters' rights.
Talk to your landlord about getting your belongings out if anything's left. Ask them if it's safe to go in. And you can negotiate with your landlord to transfer your security deposit to another apartment. Those are the kind of really very practical legal answers for folks who are in a precarious situation.
But renters' rights are way beyond the problems some here are facing. Donna Morrissey is the Red Cross spokesperson.
We have a wide array of people who have special needs. We have people who are in wheelchairs, people who have very serious medical conditions, people who are homeless. The point to remember is that there are a lot of significant problems that any city has prior to the storm making landfall, and they're going to be here after the storm clears, and we're trying to help rebuild.
Shina Galvin, homeless for 2 years, had been living under a bridge. Her local food pantry shut down during the storm, and she came to the convention center.
I was very grateful to have this place to come.
How long will you stay?
Until I can get out on my feet, or until they shut this down. And then after that, I don't know where I'll go.
So in a way, the storm gave you a place to go.
It did. It did give me a place to go to.
John, as you can see here behind me, people have been coming and going all day long. When I asked the Red Cross how long this shelter is going to be open, I was told there is no set date for closure.
So no end in sight, Marcia. It's now been 10 days since Harvey made landfall. What sorts of people are there now?
Well, it's a real mix of people. You definitely have those who have gone back to their homes, but they're coming back every day for supplies, for medical help, for legal aid. But you also have those residents that are still here that haven't been able to go home. And for them, it's a very bleak picture. They're homeless. They've got disabilities. These are people that have been struggling since way before the storm, and these are issues that have just been compounded. They've been trying to get back on their feet before, and they've just been knocked back down.
Marcia, the federal officials here in Washington have said that people should not have feared to go to shelters. People who needed food, water, shelter should not have worried about an immigration roundup. They said they would not be asked their immigration status. Are people trusting that?
There is a lot of fear. I spoke to one woman today who lives in an apartment complex, and she was here getting some supplies for people in that building. She told me that there had been some undocumented workers in her apartment complex that had been evicted because they'd been unable to pay their rent. They hadn't been able to work during the storm. Of course, they're too afraid to come here for supplies, for shelter, and for that necessary legal aid. So this is an issue that's definitely on the minds of the lawyers who are volunteering here. Of course, they're trying to help those immigrants who still have cases pending. And, you know, of course, if they don't have a home for their summons to appear in court to plead their case, if they can't receive that summons, then they may be penalized for failure to appear.
Marcia Biggs in Houston, thank you very much.
Thank you.
About 80 miles east of Houston, which is the nation's fourth largest city, Harvey also battered Beaumont, Texas, population 120,000. The city's among the hardest hit in the state. For the latest on the situation on the ground, I am joined now by phone by Beaumont Police Chief James Singletary. Chief, thanks for joining us. I got to ask first about the water situation. Late last week, the water plant shut down because of being swamped by flood water, and backup pumps went down. What's the situation now?
The water situation now is that we're getting water slowly but surely back to most of our citizens. We've had it'd be a totally different interview to tell you how that happened. We had some private industries and some and working with our water folks and getting it restored. So that in itself is an amazing story. But we're slowly but surely getting water restored. But it's going to be a while before we're going to lift the boil water notice right now. So everyone in the town, in the city, still has running water now. Is that right? Not everybody, but most of them do, and it's trickling right now in some places, and some of them are better than others. What about other conditions, Chief? Has the water started to recede yet? Yes, sir. The water has started to recede. We have a very big river here next to Beaumont, Nature's River, and it's starting to recede a little bit. It crested a couple of days ago, I think. So the water is starting to recede. There's still about 3,000 homes that we have not been able to get to see what their situation is. We've done a bunch of flyovers with the drones and the helicopters, and gosh, it's horrific. I've lived here my whole life, and I've been a cop for my whole adult life, and I've never seen anything like this. Chief, have people been able to get back to their homes? You say the water is going down. Have they been able to get back to their homes yet, or is that still a little bit away? Yeah, that's still a bit away. There's some areas that we can't even access, and it'll be a while before some citizens are able to get back to their homes. And then there's areas north of us and east of us and even south of us that are in pretty bad shape also. But it's going to be a while. This thing has impacted us, this area for years to come, I'm afraid, in so many different areas. Chief, I got to ask you. I mean, you and your force are not only working this disaster. You're living through it. I mean, imagine some of some of the homes that some of your force have been affected by this. What's that been like for you, for the men and women of your police department? Well, that's another horrible thing that's happened to our officers and our city workers. We've had over 130 of our Beaumont's first responders, the firefighters and police officers and emergency personnel that have been adversely affected, or actually significant damage to their homes. And so most of these officers, and this is what's amazing, this is why I love these guys, most of these officers are here working, and they have no idea how bad their homes are destroyed or how badly their homes are damaged, but they're here working, and it makes you feel great if you live here in Beaumont, especially if you're the chief of police.
Chief James Singletary of Beaumont, I'm glad to hear things are getting better, and we appreciate your work, your department's work, and our thoughts are with you.
You got it. Thank you very much.
Stay with us. Coming up on the NewsHour, taking stock of President Trump's promises to help the American worker and remembering a poet and a musician who left their marks on the arts in very different ways. But first, Congress returns to work this week, facing a growing to-do list. Among the new items, Hurricane Harvey relief and immigration. To talk about this on Politics Monday, we're joined by Stuart Rothenberg, a longtime political analyst who's senior editor of Inside Elections, and Amy Walter, national editor of the Cook Political Report. Stu, Amy, thanks for coming in on this Labor Day. So the president is reportedly ready to do something on DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Admissions. The reports are that he's going to sunset in 6 months to give Congress time to do something about it. Stu, let me start with you. What's at stake in this?
Well, there's a lot at stake for different people. There's at stake for the president and his supporters who want to see action on immigration and undocumented immigrants, for the Republican Party, which could easily be ripped apart by this discussion, and most importantly, John, for the 800,000 undocumented immigrants who think of the United States as their home. They haven't known any other country, any other home. The stakes are highest for them.
Yeah, I think Stu set it up perfectly. And the real question for Congress is, if there were an easy legislative solution, we would have already been there. This is something that has been going through Congress both during Democratic and Republican administrations. The divide in the Republican Party is fierce, and it even cost one member of the House leadership his seat. Eric Cantor, of course, lost in 2014 after suggesting that maybe Republicans should do more on immigration reform, deal with some of the dreamers and illegal immigration. So this has the potential where it's politically popular. We see the polling saying that the dreamers are a politically popular group of people, but it's politically fraught at the same time. The question now, in my mind, is what happens now that Congress, if this is true, that they finally their feet are put to the fire? A lot like we saw with the Affordable Care Act, where Republicans had run for years and years and years saying this was a terrible thing, we need to get rid of it. Now, once forced to deal with it, it was much more difficult because parts of the bill were popular. The same may happen with this DREAM Act, where they've been talking about it for years. We need to do something on illegal immigration, put a hard line down, and yet it's also a pretty popular program.
And Congress not being able or having trouble with this issue is actually how we got here in the first place, is because Congress couldn't do it, so President Obama did it by executive action.
Right.
Stu, it is popular. The polls show people like this program. Is this going to be an easy lift or a heavy lift?
Oh, really heavy, John. You're right. Public opinion seems to be on one side of this issue, but the president and his core supporters seem to be on a different side of this. Now, look, the president can always say, I'm not making a decision on the substance here. There are constitutional issues. The executive shouldn't be able to do this. I'm just kicking this over to Congress to make them make the decision, which is both reasonable and untrue in some respects, and that's this, that Donald Trump already has a history on immigration and the Arpaio pardon, sanctuary cities, Muslim bans, Charlottesville. The administration is already seen as not particularly tolerant and open to immigrants and undocumented immigrants. And so I think for him to say, well, it's a constitutional argument, I don't think that's going to carry the day with many people. He's going to be responsible for this policy if Congress cannot act.
And Amy, this adds to a list of things that Congress is already facing. They've now got Harvey relief. They've got to deal with the first vote scheduled for Wednesday. They've got to raise the debt ceiling. They'd like to pass a budget. They've got to pass spending bills, certainly to fund the government, and they've got a tax cut.
Right. So it's the proactive and reactive part. When the last time we talked, before they went into recess, we thought that it was going to be really just a couple of those things, debt ceiling and government funding, and then to be proactive, to get a tax cut done. That was really their top priority. We can get these other things sort of out of the way, but then Harvey and immigration on top of it makes the tax reform thing that much more difficult. When you talk to Republicans, their greatest fear coming into 2018 is that they end 2017 without substantive accomplishments, and that they have to go to voters in 2018 with sort of a laundry list of, they've passed some bills, but nothing that's particularly substantive, nothing that's really going to energize their base. So having to deal with a whole bunch of stuff that they hadn't planned on doing on top of stuff that's already fraught, that's going to be a challenge. The one thing, though, that Republicans do want to do is look as if they are competent. Get these little things out of the way that normally trip them up, like the debt ceiling and I don't mean little, but I mean the things that they should be able to do easily, so that they can get onto the more substantive stuff. That was their number one concern.
Can I just add one thing? I agree with Amy completely. I just add one thing. One thing that we've learned about this president is to expect the unexpected. We are talking now as if in the next few months we know the precise number of issues and what those issues are. The president has a habit of tweeting, I've noticed. I don't know if you've noticed that. He has a habit of tweeting and creating controversies and issues. So on top of all this, on top of funding of the government and the debt ceiling and DACA and tax reform, there may be 2 or 3 other things that develop because it hits the president's fancy and creates new problems.
Well, and also one of the reactive things is North Korea. I mean, how is that going to, this is sort of looming over everything. How is that likely to affect what's going on?
To Stu's point, the tweet about it is something that the members of Congress are going to have to react to, and the issue just in general. But I do think this gets to the issue, really, of the president and how people view him temperamentally, and whether his temperament can meet the time, right? That the concern about North Korea right now is we don't really know what's happening. There is a whole bunch that we learned about this weekend that is very troubling, and whether the president himself, his personality is one that a whole bunch of folks question whether temperamentally he can do well by this issue. It's so dangerous, and every tweet carries added significance. And so I think as we're watching where the public goes and where Congress goes, it is watching to see, again, if his temperament and his tone fits the time that we're in.
And I think that because of this, there is not the usual rally around the flag effect that we normally see when there's a foreign policy crisis. Yep. It's not as if there were a whole bunch of Americans rooting for North Korea. No, that's not the case. Americans are still rooting for the president, for Congress, for this country, of course. But there isn't that natural sense that the president has the temperament, the experience, the competence, the forthrightness that we expect from presidents, and that get our loyalty and our allegiance. And so the president still needs to earn American voters' trust, and that's a problem at this point in the presidency.
Stu, we've got to leave it there. Stu Rothenberg, Amy Walter, Politics Monday. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you.
On this Labor Day, the national holiday that celebrates the contributions of America's working men and women, President Trump tweeted, "We are building our future with American hands, American labor, and American iron, aluminum, and steel." Our William Brangham is here to talk about how President Trump is doing with his pledge to help workers. William?
That's right, John. I mean, as you well know, the president was elected in no small part because he promised to revitalize jobs in America, especially manufacturing jobs. So for a look at how American labor has been doing in the Trump era, I talked earlier today with Stephen Greenhouse. He covered the labor movement for the New York Times for many years, and he's currently writing a book about its past and future. And I started by asking him how the president, who is a billionaire real estate developer from Manhattan, had struck such a strong chord with so many blue-collar workers in the election.
My sense is President Trump was very smart in reading workers' concerns and anxieties. He saw that a lot of workers, especially blue-collar workers in the Midwest, were very concerned about stagnant wages, jobs lost to trade, closed factories, and he talked very directly and viscerally to them, saying, I'm going to do something about it. Hillary's not going to do enough about it. We're going to bring back the jobs. We're going to get tough with Mexico and China on trade. And that really resonated with people.
So let's talk a little bit about his record. The president has been talking about jobs a lot. He touts his record. He talks about the Carrier Corporation example. He talks about coal plants, renegotiating trade deals. What has his record been on job creation and helping workers?
It's unclear to me that he's done much concretely to bring back jobs, except he's been reducing regulations, and I think that has encouraged many companies. We have seen over the past few months an increase in manufacturing jobs, and economists are wondering, why this big increase. Manufacturing jobs were increasing in Obama's last year. They continue to increase. The dollar has dropped a good bit since Donald Trump was elected. That encourages our exports. And I do think that Trump has excited a lot of business executives, and the so-called animal spirits are flowing, and they're thinking, let's invest. And he also has, in some of the quote regulations he's killed, he's eliminated, delayed some regulations that help business but hurt workers. He sought to delay and perhaps kill a regulation that would make overtime pay available to an additional 4 million workers. He's delayed regulations that would protect workers against very dangerous silica dust and beryllium. He's helping Wall Street firms by delaying and perhaps canceling an Obama regulation that would require investment advisors, Wall Street advisors, to act in the best interest of workers and retirees when they're handling retirement accounts. He's canceled a Obama regulation that requires federal contractors to disclose when they violate wage laws and race discrimination laws and sex discrimination laws. So, I think business has been very pleased that he's eliminating regulations that might make them feel more ready to invest. But on the other hand, some of these moves have really not helped workers.
I mean, as you mentioned, a lot of employers would point to those regulations and say that those are the very things that hinder their ability to create jobs and to grow the economy and to grow the labor pool.
There is truth that, regulations often, create disincentives to investment. But remember, President Trump ran on a platform of, I'm going to be a big friend of workers. I'm going to help you out. And in virtually every regulation that he's acted on, he's acted for business and against workers. And he will say, and American business will say, this is good because it's helping to create jobs. On the other hand, and President Trump is boasting that I've created over 1 million jobs. Well, 1 million jobs have been created since I came into office. But President Obama's fans, economists will say, but actually the rate of job growth has been slightly slower under Trump, about 170,000 a month since January, than it was in Obama's last 6 months. Now, it's possible with all these regulations removed that job growth will increase in the next 6 months, a year, but we will see what happens.
There is a fair amount of polling out there, including a recent poll by Gallup, that indicates that workers, middle-class workers, feel that they're doing better. They are comfortable about the jobs that are available. They don't think they're going to be outsourced. They argue that they're doing better. Do you think that optimism is real, and that should President Trump get some credit for that?
I think President Trump should get some credit. I think Obama should get some credit. Remember, we had this, the worst economic recession since the Great Depression in 2007 through 2009, and the economy has really improved slowly, unevenly since 2009, and the unemployment rate is down to its lowest point in 16 years. And Donald Trump gets some credit. Obama gets a lot of credit for that. And it's understandable that workers are feeling pretty good because with unemployment so low, finally, they're thinking they have steady jobs. Wages are finally starting to increase, still way too slowly. Wages just increased by 0.1% last month. They're up 2.5% over the year, slightly more than the inflation rate, and that's good. But again, economists are wondering, with the unemployment rate so low, why aren't wages going up more? When all these employers are saying, I'm having a hard time finding people to fill jobs, why aren't they paying more? Why aren't wages going up more?
All right, Stephen Greenhouse, chronicler of the labor movement. Thank you so much.
Nice to be here.
Next, we return to the story of violence in Myanmar against the ethnic minority group known as the Rohingya. We look at their plight and the challenges they face after they flee to Bangladesh. As special correspondent Tanya Rashid found earlier this year when this story first aired, they are hardly more welcome in their new home. We should warn you, some viewers may find parts of this story disturbing.
The island is isolated, covered in bushes and underwater half of the year. It's called Tengah Chor, and it lies on the coast of Bangladesh. It's a hard and long day's boat ride from the nearest port. This rough spot might be the new home for the Rohingya, a group of more than 300,000 people the UN calls the most persecuted minority in the world. But on the camp on the mainland, Hafiz, a Rohingya activist, says that this is no place they want to go.
If we go to Tengah Chor, we will get sick. We can die. We're used to being here, and we feel safe here.
It's only a relative safety. Close to 500,000 have fled murder and persecution by the army of Myanmar to seek refuge in camps in southern Bangladesh. The Muslim Rohingya have lived in mainly Buddhist Myanmar for centuries, but are viewed as illegal ethnic Bangladeshis by the Myanmar government. The de facto leader of Myanmar, Nobel Peace Laureate Aung San Suu Kyi, has denied a UN charge of ethnic cleansing of the Rohingyas. But in the last 8 months, the numbers of Rohingyas fleeing for their lives have surged to more than 70,000. But now their lives are more precarious than ever before. Monsoon season and a punishing cyclone damaged many. So the Bangladeshi government plans to resolve the Rohingyas' continued displacement by moving 60,000 of the refugees to this remote island. Aid agencies like the UNHCR and Human Rights Watch have expressed alarm over the planned relocation. Our journey to the island was difficult. We began a week before the cyclone. We traveled first by ferry, then by a private boat, where a local fisherman agreed to take us to the island. It was a dangerous journey. Pirates are known to control these seas and take hostages for ransom. But the island is not easy to access.
The tides are too high on the bigger ship, so we had to get a smaller boat to take us to the island. We just made it on the island.
We managed to find a muddy bog to land near and get us across to the island. The government has already moved forward with the plan of making the island more habitable by planting trees. But this local official doesn't want the Rohingyas moving into his district. He thinks it will create more problems for his community.
In the past, the Rohingya were related to the drug problem. They are linked to drugs, linked to smuggling. Most of the people here, their main livelihood is fishing. The bad character and influence of the Rohingya people will impact the locals here.
But the Bangladeshi government believe the Rohingyas cross the border at will, with the help of smugglers and corrupt border guards. The government argues the relocation will guarantee their isolation from the rest of the population. But the island is formed by river sediment, making it unstable, and it could be eroded in 5 years' time. Dr. Ainun Nishat is a leading expert on climate change in Bangladesh.
The Meghna estuary, or the coastal belt of Bangladesh, is highly vulnerable to storm surges and cyclonic weather. Due to impact of climate change, we believe that the frequency of climate change may not be increasing, but intensity of the storm surges are definitely going to increase. So they should be accommodated in good concrete structure, where at the time of emergency people can be moved to a height of 20 feet and above.
Today, about 1 million Rohingyas live in apartheid-like conditions in internment camps in Rakhine State of Myanmar. Separated from the Buddhist majority, they have no citizenship and need permission to marry or to travel outside of their own villages. On October 9th of last year, Rohingya militants killed 9 Myanmar police officers. The Myanmar military then led a wide and brutal counterinsurgency campaign in retaliation, where they killed more than 1,000 Rohingyas, torched homes, and mosques. The Myanmar government calls these accusations exaggerations and denies charges of ethnic cleansing. Dil Nawaz is one of 70,000 Rohingyas who fled to Bangladesh. She was gang raped by soldiers and witnessed her husband's murder in front of her eyes.
I'm looking at a photo of her husband who was hacked to death about 5 months ago. And this is a photograph she took shortly after he was murdered.
They used a machete on my husband in front of me on the road. I saw it with my own eyes. They chopped him into pieces in front of me in a rice field. Then the army came and took all the women out to the rice fields and took several women. 5 men took turns raping them. They took people's gold jewelry, rings, and earrings. They killed some children. Then they burned all the houses down, followed by the mosque. Then the military went back to a Buddhist area. This is why we fled to Bangladesh.
Activist Hafiz says they have found refuge here.
Bangladesh is small and overpopulated, but they gave us a place to stand. This is a big thing.
But like many other Rohingya, he wants a sense of permanence.
Instead of sending us to Tengachor, if the Myanmar government could, we request that they grant us citizenship.
45-year-old Dilbar hopes for a last-ditch political solution.
If the Bangladesh government and the Myanmar government negotiate a deal and send us back, then we'll be happy. If this doesn't happen, then please bomb us. We came here, left our homes, rice. We came here to save our lives. If we have no peace, then it's better to die. Our children died there. We sacrificed everything and came here for peace. If you take us to the island, it will be like killing us, slaughtering us. We are like ants. We are nothing. It won't take much to kill us. Just bomb us. Nobody will make a case against you because we have no ground under our feet.
Their hope to find that safe ground one day. But for now, they remain in limbo, not of this land and not pushed from it. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Tanya Rashid on Tengachor Island, Bangladesh.
Finally tonight, we take time to remember a great writer and a noted musician. First, John Ashbery, considered one of America's most important and influential poets. He died yesterday in Hudson, New York. He won the Pulitzer Prize and the National Book Award, among many other accolades. Jeffrey Brown profiled him back in 2007. Here's an excerpt.
For much of his life, John Ashbery has been a walker in the city.
I used to have a little recording device I took around with me so I could record those and other things that occurred to me while I was walking. Really?
The words, phrases, and sounds he collected often ended up in his poetry, a body of work that has led him to be considered one of the nation's most important writers of the last half-century. Ashbery was born in Rochester, New York in 1927. As a young man, he and friends like Frank O'Hara and Kenneth Koch formed what came to be called the New York School of Poetry. His first book of poems, Some Trees, was published in 1956. In 1975, Self-Portrait in a Convex Mirror cemented his reputation and earned Ashbery a Triple Crown, the Pulitzer Prize, National Book Award, and the National Book Critics Circle Award. Now, at age 80, he's just garnered a rather different and unusual honor, being named as MTV's first Poet Laureate. In all, he's published more than 30 volumes of poetry, criticism, and essays, including in recent months a new book of verse, A Worldly Country, and a collection of selected later poems called Notes from the Air, which includes the poem This Room.
The room I entered was a dream of this room. Surely all those feet on the sofa were mine. The oval portrait of a dog was me at an early age. Something shimmers, something is hushed up. We had macaroni for lunch every day, except Sunday, when a small quail was induced to be served to us. Why do I tell you these things? You're not even here.
I talked with John Ashbery recently at his New York apartment.
Notes from the air. Now, is that a good description of where words or phrases come from the air, in a sense?
Yes, I would say that it is. Poetry comes to me out of thin air or out of my unconscious mind. It's sort of the way dreams come to us and the way we get knowledge from them through television, old movies, which I watch a lot of. Lines of dialogue suddenly seem to be part of a poem.
Those notes from the air that he turns into poems, yes, he still drafts his poetry on an old typewriter, have earned him a reputation for being hard to read. An Ashbery poem often has no clear narrative and a bewildering, if humorous, wordplay. We'll party when the millennium gets closer, he writes in the poem Tuesday Evening. Meanwhile, I wanted to mention your feet.
Is it sort of a conversation with yourself going on?
Yes, very often. I mean, maybe not me with myself, but of two personalities in my head who are arguing and sort of ignoring me at the same time.
They're arguing in your head and ignoring you.
I sometimes feel that that's what's happening.
So you have this reputation for being difficult. Does that bother you?
Well, it kind of does, because I think that it precedes my poetry and may discourage people from picking it up and, oh, he's so difficult. I'd have to read a book about him before I could appreciate anything that he wrote.
Does a poem have to be understood in the way we normally think of understanding language?
Well, I've never quite understood about understanding. My ideas for poetry, in fact, tend to come more from music than they do from poetry or literature.
What do you mean by that?
One listens to a piece of great music, say, and feels deeply moved by it and wants to put this feeling into words, but it can't be put into words. That's what the music has already supplied the meaning, and words will just be superfluous after that. But it's that kind of verbal meaning that can't be verbalized that I try to get at in poetry.
John Ashbery was 90 years old. There was another loss in the world of arts and letters. Steely Dan co-founder and guitarist Walter Becker also died yesterday. He was instrumental in producing the funky melodies and enigmatic lyrics that captivated an avid following for the band. Becker and Donald Fagen, a friend from Bard College, founded Steely Dan in 1971. Are you reeling in the The band's first album produced a unique sound in rock with memorable hits such as Do It Again and Reelin' in the Years. Becker's bass and guitar licks would become a signature of the band's jazz-infused sound. Famously introspective, Becker rarely sought the spotlight. Steely Dan toured for only 2 years after their 1972 debut, choosing to focus on producing records. The band stopped recording in 1981, returning in 1993. In a statement, Fagen called Becker smart as a whip, hysterically funny, and cynical about human nature, including his own. Steely Dan was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2001. Here's Becker and Fagen performing one of their hits, Peg, on a 2000 broadcast on PBS. Walter Becker was 67 years old. And that's the News Hour for tonight. Thanks for spending part of your Labor Day with us. I'm John Yang. Join us online and again here again tomorrow evening when Judy will be back. For all of us at the PBS News Hour, thanks. See you soon.
You're watching PBS.